So control is provide some access to decision making where you can. Establish realistic levels of output, avoid unnecessary changes, and create short-range goals to give people some wins during a period of time like this. Understanding, publicize decision making if things are changing. Videos are a great mode right now, but communicate in multiple forums, email, newsletters, videos, whatever you have at your fingertips to do, or maybe you can add things right now that would make it a really favorable mode of communication for people. Familiarize people with this transition process. Help them understand they're not going crazy, that this is really hard. Have individual meetings with people who do feel like it's driving them crazy, and talk to them and let them grieve and talk. So support, engage people in group planning. That's really important. Is there an opportunity to put people in groups and have them work together on some things of how work is going to be done now and going into the future? Create temporary policies to support any gaps, right? Some companies have had to create temporary policies on wearing masks, right? I mean, that's not a fun thing, but they have to. And some people don't like that. But it's a temporary policy to get through this gap in fear of spreading the virus at a work environment. Inform what they can start doing differently, what they could stop doing, and what they should continue doing. Provide training for any new tasks, right? If you're going to tell somebody to start doing Zoom meetings, right, give them training on that. There's a lot of people out there. Stuart Fields is a great trainer on that, if you all know Stuart. And thank people, thank people, thank people. Again, not rocket science, right? I'm sure you're doing a lot of these things. And then the P, make the future vision exciting. Do you know what part of that future looks like right now? And I say part because anyone who knows everything about how to look in the future is way ahead of the game. But as you start to understand the future, make that exciting, that vision exciting for people. If needed, redesign rewards right now in order to quickly reward people who get those quick successes, and continuously articulate the new identity. Okay, any questions? If anyone wants to wave on the chat, you can, to say, hey, it's all right. You want to wave on your screen, you could wave on your screen. Okay, thanks, man. We're still in the neutral zone. That creative side we talked about when I talked about our fry. Search for new ideas from your workforce, right? There might be some answers in there of things that could really have a dramatic effect on productivity, on work environment, a whole bunch of things. So continue to search for new ideas from your people. Use creative problem-solving techniques. Encourage those experiments. Be 3M right now. Say, I want everybody to spend 15% of their week coming up with some new ideas. They could be as crazy as you want them to be, but let's talk about anything new and any ideas. And reward risk takers, for people to come out and say, I don't think we need to do this anymore. That's hard for some people right now, especially if they're anxious about their employment, to take risks. So reward risk takers. All right, now we're going to talk about new beginnings. Yes, that's one of our baby chickens that I talked about earlier. It doesn't really look like that anymore, though, I got to tell you. So new beginnings, it's when people start to feel energized around all the changes that have taken place, and have stopped doing things, have started doing new things, and continue doing other things, and are engaged and can articulate and kind of describe you know, what life is like, or what their jobs are like in this new environment. So signs of facilitated new beginnings. The picture and the plan and the parts have been fine-tuned, right? Translated changes into productive new behaviors. So if some behaviors needed to change as a result of, you know, what's going to be done differently, you've seen those, you've observed those. People are behaving in a way that is pointed directly towards the future. Focus on the early efforts and wins, and, you know, your people can articulate the new identity. They could describe how it's different, what the new skills are, what they've learned, how they interact with customers, etc. The list goes on. All right, I'm going to go through the process of loss again, just to kind of give you some tips on effective responses for folks who are going through the grief cycle, right, as a result of losses that affected them at work. So for the shock stage, communicate, communicate, communicate in different forums, in different ways. And even if there's nothing to communicate, communicate that there's nothing new to communicate about a change. If we don't communicate and we leave a gap because there's nothing new, we are human beings, we will fill in the blanks. We will come up with our own idea of what the lack of communication means, and rumors will start. So communication consistently and constantly is very important during that stage. During the feeling stage, it's very important to listen. You know, hear what the anger is about, what the fear is about, what the anxiety about. Really try to get a good handle on that from people. Acknowledge, normalize for people that, yes, that's pretty normal to feel that. Because I've been working on this for 3 months. I was there 3 months ago. And I'm telling you, you're going to get through this. But definitely listen and acknowledge feelings. Be empathetic. Don't say, I know how you feel. We never really know how someone else feels based on all of their life circumstances and how a change affects them. And that sometimes that could take a little bit away from them of, wait, I'm a unique individual. I feel a certain way about this. How would you know how I feel? But empathy, you know, I can't imagine how you feel going through that. I was stuck in a stage like that for a while, and here's what helped me through it. The bargaining state, brainstorm. You know, if people are trying to hang on to some old things, old habits, old skills, or old tools, brainstorm how they can move from that to something moving forward. And then if people are in a depression stage, if you noticed, I brought in 2 things at once. There's support and there's challenge, right? So people need support in this stage. Do not ignore people who appear depressed. There's something needed that an employer can directly affect in a positive way if they're provided the appropriate support. But people in that state also need to be challenged at sometimes to help them get through it, to help them conclude it and start to move on. Recognize once people start to move out of that stage, right? And not everybody gets depressed, okay? Not everybody goes through depression and bargaining. But once people start to get to that commitment stage and are focusing on the right things and doing the right things, having success at the right things, recognize, recognize, recognize. Come up with a creative rewards program to do that. And it doesn't have to be money. It could be some fun thing we do online that, you know, we celebrate someone's successes, because if they're having success, you want other people to see, you want to shine a light on them and say, that's the thing that we're looking for. And people will start to go, oh, that's the behavior. That's the thing they wanted us to do that I didn't understand for a month. And then when you get to a point where you're a new beginning, woohoo, let's celebrate and pop champagne bottles if that's your fancy. But that's the time when you really start to celebrate with people that we made it, we did it, we're successful. That's very important. I'm kind of starting to wrap up here a little bit. And before I ask, you know, I'm not going to ask anyone to volunteer this right now, but are there any questions or anything in particular that you'd like me to revisit, go back to before I conclude things here? No, we're good?
Well,
okay. I mentioned this in the beginning.
But
it's very important to know what phase you're in, right? You can only take people as far as you've gone. You know, we've heard that before. As a former mental health therapist, right? One of the first things I learned in college, you're only going to take people as far as you've gone. So it's really important to be humble and acknowledge and know where you're at with the process of dealing with any losses, where you're at in the neutral zone, anxiety, you know, concern about security for the future, or if you're in that new beginning. Especially if you're in a new beginning and others are still in the neutral zone or ending, you want to be able to know that so you can be empathetic and understand they are not where you are at. and they need some support to be helped along through that process. So I leave you with that challenge today. Try to think about where you're at. So moving forward, how will you help yourself and others create a positive and lasting change within your work environment? Whether you're an employee at a company or you're the supervisor or manager, the owner or the leader, ask yourself how you will help create that for folks. I am going to, I said way too much here. I want to revisit transition management plan. Again, it's very important. You may be doing this, you may be doing some of it, you may be doing none of it, but it is very important after today to sit down and think about how you are managing the transition right now. And based on some of the things you heard today, is there something more formal you could put together? Are you feeling really good about what you're doing? Or do you feel like you could use some support to put something together that's viable to help the transition of your people? What I do, I help small businesses, medium-sized businesses that typically don't have human resources people because they're not at that number of people yet. I help them with these things, is consult with them on how to put the transition management plan together, come up with communication templates, reward structures in order to help people get through the neutral zone. I also do this training. I guess I'm doing a shameless plug here. I do this training for companies. I could do this virtually for their managers, and I have another training I do for employees so they can be familiarized with the concepts. So if you have any questions for me or would like to know more about my services, again, my name is Tom Graber, and I'm the owner of Workplace Elevation. So that is my presentation and training for today. This was a 4-hour training. I turned it into, I think, 45 minutes. So do note if you wanted something more extensive, there's a different version.
Well, thank you, Tom. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your insight in this area with all of us. And I think people know now, if you didn't get Tom's contact, we can kind of send that information out to you from the chamber so that you have his contact information if you need to reach out to him for other resources or for further guidance on something that you learned today. But we really appreciate you taking the time to share with us, and we will be communicating out from the chamber kind of what our next calls are. We do have an opportunity this